Two time for the cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang. Rockin' with the best cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang. Alaila with cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang. Watching my body cha-cha.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and members of the Shasha Nation. Welcome to another episode. My name is Dayo Moyo, your interviewing plug. I don't know what that means, but anyways, it's another episode and I'm your host for today. That's because your host is on the hot seat. How are you today, Hafeestonova?
I'm good.
I don't get your type energy. Where you get that energy from? Creator of the energy from? What's the type of me?
Yes, now I'm the creator of the energy force. So, you know, the energy is inbuilt, is within, is in the DNA.
I wanted to ask, what's the name of your physics teacher? Because that energy force, I want to know the formula.
Now God.
All right. The way I would like to start this discussion is to ask you how you got the name for your podcast. How did you come up with that name? And I also want to ask how you also came about the name Hafeestonova.
Let me start from the name of the podcast, yeah? It was, I think it was something very easy for me to come up with. I've always been into music reviews for a very long time. You know, I've been writing, literally, like I write music reviews on my blog back then. That was how it all started. So when I wanted to do podcast, I needed, you know, a name that would capture what it is exactly that I'm saying. And the idea of the podcast was to talk about new songs coming out every week. That was the idea. And I thought to myself, okay, so what do you call something new that every Nigerian use? And the word just came to my head, cha-cha. Cha-cha means brand new, you know, fresh. And that was where the cha-cha came in from. Then obviously the main one is music review, you know, podcast. So, but yeah, as for the name Hafeestonova, that is like a long story, but I'm going to try and cut it short. So basically, the name Hafeestonova is a combination of my name and my nickname. My name is Hafeez or Abdulhafiz normally, but my nickname used to be Feesto bin Nova. That used to be my nickname. And I got that from a phone I used to use, which is called Supernova. That was where I got that from. So I took away the super and I added, you know, the Feesto bin Nova into it. That means, you know, Feesto, born of Nova. But with each name, I had like a different kind of personality. But I wanted a personality whereby I can combine both personalities together and just be one. And that name was what did it for me. It was actually a girl who called me the name out of mistake. You know, she just called the name out of mistake. And after like 2-3 days, I thought to myself, wait, what this girl said kind of made sense. Then I sat down, I wrote it down, like I wrote it out, and I saw how I wanted the name to be constructed, how I wanted it to be called. And immediately I called myself that name like twice. I could feel that energy. That was when the energy was born. That was when the energy was created. I could feel myself becoming a brand new person, and that was how Hafeestonova came to life.
I wanted to actually ask how you started your podcast, but before I ask that, let's go back in history and talk to me about how growing up was like for you, because that will make me and your listener understand where you're coming from. Because you see this thing, podcasting, anything we do, it's about our personality, and our personality is about where we come from, who we are, our parents, our identity, the environment, the school we go to, etc. So take us back in history. Let's talk about Hafeestonova when he was 6 months, when he was in his mother's womb. Talk to me about growing up, brother.
Growing up, I had one of the most, should I say, eventful, childhood in terms of activities and in terms of, seeing things. I'm one of those lucky people that got to understand, much more about life before I got to my teenage years. I used to tell people like majority of the things that I know, like there were things I already probably knew before I was, give or take, 10 years old. I got exposed to a lot of things, But one thing that remained, constant throughout my exposure growing up was music. Music had always been a part of me. I grew up in Festac town. Then in Festac, if you grew up in Festac, there are probably like 2 or 3 things you could become, like literally. If you are one of those people that your parent is straight, then obviously, school, doctor, lawyer, whatever. But if you belong to the street, someone like me that grew up on the streets, you are either going to become a musician or you become an actor or, you just probably go into fraud. Those are the 3 things that the streets have to offer. And for me, I've been around music, like I said. I've been around the likes of Two-Face, Asados, Tony Tuetula, Sound Sultan, may God bless his soul. I literally grew up with these people. So, like I said, I had music around me. But at that point, I didn't understand, what it was. I just knew that, okay, these people were artists and they were singing and that was just it, But like I said, growing up, I was exposed to a lot of things that, someone my age shouldn't expose to. I started running from the cops, I think when I was about 6 years old. I used to be among all these big bros whereby they will be playing, they will be gambling. And then I was talking about 1990 something when gambling was highly illegal, in Nigeria. Like now, these days, you can see people hanging around playing snooker and it's all legal. But back then, playing snooker was highly illegal. If they catch you, you are going to go to the police station. And I was a kid on the street growing up. So I was among all these people. And when they have their gamble, there's this thing they say, Onile, that's the person that owes the money. So they give me the cash, so that they know that when police come, the highest thing that police will do is just give me a knock on my head and say, go home. They won't get me arrested. And all the money is going to be with me. So they will get, all chased and all that, but I will be the one to take the money home. And the next day, when they eventually release them, I share back their money to them. And I also take my own cut, to buy biscuits or to buy whatever it is I needed to buy. But yeah, I enjoyed, or I appreciate, let me use the word appreciate. I appreciate, all those things because by the time I was going into a teenager, I already knew the options that life presented. So I already knew that, okay, if I take 2 steps towards this place, this is how I might end up. If I take 2 steps towards that place, this is how, I might end up. So I was like giving like a guide whereby all my, peers at that point, they were trying to experiment, doing this, doing that. Some of them ending up with bad decision. I already had an idea of, if I decide to, start doing this at this point in time, this is what will happen and that what will happen. And that in a way helped my growth and my understanding, about life, very much. So basically, yeah, that's, what growing up was like for me. It was rough, it was tough, and at the same time, it was sweet. And oh yes, just to mention, I used to be a very, very great dancer when I was small. As a matter of fact, my nickname used to be Michael Jackson, but we can't dance anymore. It is well.
There's what we call street smartness or being street smart. And I'm just wondering and curious, what's the biggest lesson the streets ever taught you, in your own opinion, thinking about it now? And what is the biggest thing you think you could have gotten from the streets that wasn't really, really good and you had to kind of probably unlearn later when you grew up?
Okay, let me start from the second question. I think something about the street that, I kind of was forced or, was being pushed on top, was my approach, towards ladies. The street had it had no respect. Let me use that word, for ladies. You could see a girl literally walking by and, you just walk out and like, hey, baby, what's up? Shake that ass, Some words that are not polite for you to say to a lady. But like you rightly said, growing up, I began to learn that, okay, these things are not what is, supposed to be. And for some of the things that the street taught me, I feel like the street taught me a lot of good things. But I feel like the most important one that I owed there, even at that very young age, is like life is too short. Because I was about 7 when I witnessed, the first cold-blooded murder. So at that particular point, I knew like, man, shit, seeing the guy on the floor bleeding out and everything, and nobody had the guts to, go there to help him up until about maybe 2 hours later. That was when I knew that, look, man, life is too short. And when it comes to it, at the end of the day, man, you're on your own. No, the streets does not send you at all. That was number one. Then number two, never ever, snitch on the streets. I mean, never betray the streets. Stay loyal to your people. I mean, like, stay very, very loyal to your people. Loyalty is one thing I learned on the streets.
Yeah, let's talk Sound Sultan. You mentioned him in passing in one of the answers to your question.
Yeah.
But I follow your status, and I know that when he passed on, you even did an episode like a tribute to him. Talk to me about him. When did you get introduced to his music, and who is it to you?
Okay, Sultan is a big bros, to me. I first of all got introduced to Sultan when he did the song Jagbajantis. That day, there's this, like I said, I grew up in Festac. So for those people that know Festac Borough, there's this place called 402 Road. That was where I grew up. And there's this block called Block 7. That was where one of the producers there, Nelson Brown, that was where he used to stay. In the night, around, let's say, 6, 7, 8, they used to fry fried yam and akara and stew. So around that time, obviously, my dad, God rest his soul also, would send me to go and get him akara. And I'll go there. And most time, that's where all these people, you see them, Asadors, Two-Face, Face, Blackface, that's where they will be. They'll just be, doing some a cappella shit and stuff like that. So it was one of these days that I went there and I got to meet, Sound Sultan, the tall, lanky, skinny guy then. And he was doing a cappella of that. It wasn't even there. Somebody was playing the tape for those that was around there. Somebody was playing the everybody, join Jagbajanti. Somebody was playing the tape for them. And it was not even a tape that was recorded on a beat or anything. It was just like an a cappella version. And immediately I heard that, I knew that, man, I like this song. I like this song. And that was the first time I heard the name, Sound Sultan, as a kid growing up. And after that, the song came out. And when I saw the song on television, I was like, I don't hear this song before. Now, like, I was one of the first people that, had this song, that bragging rights and all that. Then I think the second time that I actually, have like a vivid collection where we had like a little conversation was in I can't remember. I think 2009 or 2008. So I went for a video shoot, and Sultan was the one directing the video shoots as at then. So I got there, I saw Sound Sultan. I was like, hey, Baba, what's up? What's this up? And I was like, hey, I could. And the most interesting thing about him is the video shoot was supposed to start, I think, around 12 that afternoon. The video shoot did not start until, let's say, 8 p.m. in the night. And all through, Sultan was just seated in one place, pressing his phone and asking for updates, like how far we don't ready, you could not even tell, because I remember I went with a friend and I told my friend, like, look, now Sultan sit down there. And he was like, nah, that can't be Sound Sultan. Like, someone of his caliber would just sit down like that. There was no pride. It was so humble. We were just seated alone, just minding his business, and you could literally just take him for somebody else. Like literally you could take him for somebody else. So that was, the second time I met Sultan, and we just had a little chat. Hey, Baba, what's up? This music thing. Because then I was also actually trying to get into music, and he also gave me a little bit of advice. Then after that, the next time I met Sultan was when he was having his carnival. This was 2009, December. So they were having this satellite carnival. And, once it comes to satellite carnival, the only carnival you have to be is the Sound Sultan carnival. It brings in a lot of artists. That was also when I met DJ Ziz, I met Da Green, I met Baba D, Black. A lot of them, they were there. So, and I was part of the crew that went to cover the carnival, the cameraman that went to cover the carnival. My family friend, I Play Media, he at that time started working for Sultan. So we also got, closer. So in a way, I can basically say Sultan was like, a family to me, like an extended family to me, because, I had a lot of encounter with, Sound Sultan. It's just so sad, what happened.
You mentioned that at a point also you wanted to become a musician. You also mentioned that you also had the talent for dancing. talk to me about that dream and what you did to try to make that dream a realization and how it finally went.
Okay, so for the dancing did not go past primary school. That dancing, literally died immediately I left primary school and I got secondary school. There was no even dream about that. The only thing I could remember was I could dance now. I mean, they used to call me Michael Jackson. That was all. But as for the singing, I think I started writing lyrics when I was in SS2. That was when I started writing lyrics. But I didn't really show it to anybody, not until I got to year 2 in my university. I met, my music partner then. We were just having a normal discussion about music. And then he mentioned that he writes songs and blah, 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 blah. And I also mentioned that, I write songs also. And he said, let me see. And I was very, very skeptical and I was very, very shy to show what I had written because I'd never shown anybody. And I didn't want it to feel like, oh man, you wrote nonsense. So I just showed him and I was like, wow, this is good. Like, I love your punchlines and, you could really use this. I was like, for real? I was like, yeah, for real. And that was how the conversation just blew. And before we knew it, we formed a group. We formed a rap group, both of us. And before you knew it, got into the studio, did our first song. And before we knew it, we became one of the most, popular rapper as at that time in Olabisi Onabanjo University. If there's anybody that went to Olabisi Onabanjo University from, let's say, 2009, 2012, it will be difficult for them not to know the name Hafeestonova or Martian Forces. Unless, of course, those people, are not part of the, people that socialize in school. Maybe they are the book type and all that. But if you're part of the people that socialize, that you go to events, then there is no way you will not know our name because we really gave it a good run. We shook them and we let them that, hey, look, there are some new rappers on the block and we're here to take over. And we did the best we could. But leaving school and getting into Lagos and seeing how, the music industry works. And that was when I just said, okay, you know what, now I'm not going to do music unless I have money to push myself because it's like you're going to become a slave for somebody else. And then you still had our parents that still wanted us to, be serious with life, quote and unquote. Because even then, you are doing music, they still see you as not being serious with life. So all those things combined just form the decision of, I'm done with music for now. Maybe later in the future, but for now, I'm done with music. And that was how, I pursued the dream and I ended the dream like that.
Now, there's this story I read on your status where you talked about how your dad introduced you to a genre of music. Can you talk to me about the influence of your dad as regards music? What kind of influence did he have on you?
First of all, let me say, my dad, may his soul rest in peace. His influence on me musically was not something that was direct. I wouldn't say he influenced me directly, but I would say he influenced me a lot. Because, if not for my dad, I wouldn't have been a fan of Fela. I think my dad bought about 3 or 4 Fela CDs and we were listening to it almost every day. And aside from Fela's music also, my dad also listened to people like Obey, Collington, Barrister. Once in a while, they listened to Sonny Ade. So those Fuji music and yes, Akpala. There's also Aruna Eshola in the mix also. So those were the kind of music that my dad were listening to. And my dad was a music person in his own way. He wasn't fanatic about music, but then again, when he puts on a record and he starts playing it, you could tell that, okay, this man Sabi, he knows what he's doing. He knows this music. But with my dad, because, if my dad is at home Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and once you are done with your house chores and everything, you just put in the music and you begin to hear it. Or if you're traveling, road trip, my dad used to be fun because my dad is always having some selected cassettes in his car that he's going to play. And as a kid then, like I said, because I've always been a fan of music, whenever he plays those music, I'd rather listen to those music than just to sleep. And that was how, I got introduced to a lot of, so like I said, it's not as if he influenced me directly by saying, oh, you must listen to this, oh, you must listen to that. But just from him playing those songs and vibing with those songs for his own enjoyment, I also got, a feeling of those music, and I got, in tune, with those music, so that was how it was able to, influence me musically.
And definitely read so many of your throwbacks on your status. And earlier this year, anytime I go through your status and you talk about the lesson that your dad taught you, I'm like, wow. And so it kept me wondering. I really do not know if you are open to discussing this, but as I listened today when we were on Clubhouse and how you talked about how you were able to navigate that with your podcast and all. And I'm just wondering, there could be someone who is listening to your podcast, one of your listeners, who is facing one or two things, probably something similar. And there's this part where music is powerful too. Music is something some people just go to when they are happy. And so some people could also be coming to your podcast. Probably they are sad, they are facing through things. I just want to ask, how were you able to navigate that period of time, even considering the fact that, like you said yesterday, if I remember correctly, you did not even stop your podcast episode. Instead, in your own words, you said you put yourself into it as if like hook, line, and sinker. Are you open to talking to me about that period and how your podcast was able to help you to navigate that period of your life?
Well, I'm going to try as much as I can to keep it, short and simple, not to, because trust me, there's a whole lot to say about that, but I'll just try and keep it, short or simple. But I think the basic thing is, okay, so I'm going to say this here. I personally did something that I just later realized it was toxic. And what I did was, at first, I didn't allow myself to grieve. Instead of grieving, I threw myself into the podcast, I just kept on putting out the podcast, kept recording, because I didn't want to grieve. I feel like if I had just stopped, putting out the podcast episode, then I will have to grieve. And I didn't just want to grieve. I didn't just want to believe, that it was gone. But after a while, I decided, I couldn't do this anymore because I became so tired. I became so exhausted, and it was beginning to affect, my mental health. So I decided that, no, let me find a better way to grieve. And I felt, okay, wait, what is that one thing that if my dad was alive today, we can sit down together and talk about together? And music came into my head. So what I did was, I remembered those songs we used to listen to while we were traveling or when we were just in the house. And I began to look for those songs, and I started to just listen to those songs, just to remember those good moments when, I'll be in my dad's car and this song will be playing, and I'll just be sitting down watching my dad singing it word for word. So that was basically, how I was later able, to cope with it in a much more, healthy way. So I just got music that we used to listen to together, and I started playing those music, and those music, they were bringing back memories. As painful as those memories were, they were also sweet, because then I started to realize, in as much as my dad was not there, 75% of the time, like literally wasn't there when I was growing up. It was either in Calabar or Port Harcourt or Abuja, somewhere working. Most times when I see my dad, it was always during the holidays. But beyond all of that, I started to realize there was something that still gave us a bond. There was something that still made us add that father and son, connection. And that was music. So I just allowed myself to start enjoying, I went back listening to a lot of Fela songs. I went back listening to a lot of Barrister songs. And that was what was able to allow me, to grieve in a very, very, healthy way.
Now, you mentioned that before you started the podcast, you were writing on your blog. And before I ask how you finally transitioned from the blog to the podcast, I also know that you write whether books or short articles and all. In fact, there's this article you wrote on the Nigeria Pod or blog that was pretty succinct. And so I was wondering, or I am wondering, how you got involved in writing, and talk to me about the blog or writing about music and how the transition to the podcast?
I got into writing through my secondary school teacher, Mr. Igbinaike. May God bless that man wherever he is, every time, any day. When we're in secondary school and they always give you essay and they say, write about yourself or write about an holiday that you went to go and spend in London, even though you're in Nigeria, all those just essay write-up and everything. So he was a new teacher. He came to the school, I think, when I was in SS1 or SS2. I can't remember when exactly he came into the school. But on our exam, our first term exam, I did a write-up, and I think the write-up had to do with Dayo. So I wrote, the story about Dayo, and I submitted. And while after the whole examination and the marking script, he called me and he was like, yeah, it was an SS2, because I could remember it was like, if I'm going to write my WAEC, that I should make sure that it's a story that I write, that I am very good in writing stories, that my imagination, that although my vocabulary, are not that much, but my imagination and the way of how I can narrate a story is very good, and it wants me, to work on that. So like every week or every 2 weeks, he either gives me an assignment to write a story, or whenever he teaches the junior ones and they write a story, he gives me to mark them, and, to see which story had the best, which students had the best story and all that. So that was where the initial, writing started for me. I think that was when I now got to discover that, I think I can write as a talent. That was where it all originated from. And from that point on, I kept writing. Transitioning that into I started writing about music. I honestly can't remember how I got into writing about music, but I feel like it will be probably me writing just an article concerning a particular topic on music, and I liked it, and I felt, I should continue writing about music. And before you know it, going from, talking about, the music industry as a whole, I started moving into writing about songs coming out, on a weekly basis, because I listen to these songs on a weekly basis. So I just started, writing about them. And that was how I moved from, general writing into music. Then when I got on the radio station, I needed a show whereby I could do on my own. And I felt like, hey, why you're writing about music now? Why not just, instead of you writing about this music now, why not just be talking about it on your radio show, right? So what I do is, when it's time for me to host my show, I just go to my blog and I literally just read from what I have written on my blog on my radio show. And that's just like how it all started, for me. So the first thing first is I write on the blog. I think I write on the blog on Thursday. Then Friday, I read from the blog on my radio show. And that was how, that started. And that was literally when it was time for me to do my podcast. I mean, like I said, it was only natural that music was the only thing I could talk about, because that's the only thing that has been constant in my life from day one to that particular point in my life. And I thought, there's nothing else I want to do rather than talk about music, because I'm very good at it. And that was how, the transition went.
Well, how did you move, or why did you move from radio to podcasting? You could have just done this on radio. Okay,
so the radio thing, during the 2017 resection, I was part of those people that was let go, because the radio station I was working for was downtrenched. They were cutting their losses, and eventually they folded up, so they let us go because they couldn't pay us and everything. So I was really, really struggling to go back on radio. Like, I was struggling a lot. At the point, I even got depressed and all that, and I just needed something, to do, but nothing was coming on. So I left that for a while. I learned digital marketing, and I was doing digital marketing. Then one day, I listened to a podcast episode. I was on Instagram doing something, and I saw a post about a podcast. I literally had no idea what podcasting was. I just clicked on it and I listened. Immediately, I heard the voice. In the first 20 seconds, I knew that this was what I was going to do. Like, this is what I wanted to do in my life at that part. I just knew, like, this was what I wanted to do. So I listened to the whole podcast episode, And that was on the first day. The second day again, I went back to go and just to be sure, maybe it was because it was sounding like something that I used to know. I just wanted to be sure. I listened to it for the second time. I still had that belief that no, now everything could do with this last. The third time, the same thing. Then I decided, okay, you know what? Now that I'm certain that this is what I want to do, let me reach out, to the owner of this podcast. And that podcast was what literally changed, the course of my life at that particular point in time. It gave me, a sense of purpose. And that was a podcast episode by Queen Rafi, Queen Rafi Space. That's the name of the podcast. And the host is Queen Rafi. And for that, because I remember, like I said, the first 20 seconds of listening to that podcast, I knew that this was what I was going to do. And at that point, I think I had a feeling like, you know what? Even if radio does not come back to you, if you do this, you are good, you are golden, you are solid. And that was just it.
In society, there are a number of things that when you begin to discuss, people just leave facts and begin to argue on emotions. And I was listening to one of your podcasts you did recently, I think with Mutolania, if I'm correct. And then before you started discussing with him, you said something that goes along the line like, oh, we're going to talk about facts here. And if you just want to just debate on emotions, you can leave right now. And so I'm wondering, have you ever discussed a topic that was so controversial in terms of your own position, and there was a backlash of some sort, someone coming to your DM? And what do you even think about putting in on your own opinion, saying, for example, oh, this song is good, and this song, I don't think it is, it's somehow. Are you all concerned that you would receive some sort of backlash from people who hold strong beliefs like yourself in a particular artist or in a particular song?
I won't say I've had backlash, but what I've had is, a little bit of, what we call, we agree to disagree. I've had that conversation a lot with people. But yeah, I don't always have that concern because I try as much as I can to be as objective as I can. And when I use my own perspective, I make it clear that this is my own perspective. So even if they want to come for me, I already put that disclaimer there, like, this is my perspective. So if you're not coming for me based on that, I just refer you to, sorry, didn't you hear when I said this is my own perspective, not, me talking as a music critic. And I won't lie to you, it is hard because there are times there are some songs, personally, I would like those songs. But those songs on a general level might not be as good as what is expected. So what I do is this most times. So let's say, for example, I'm reviewing this new song by Burna Boy and Wizkid titled Ballon d'Or. So I try as much as I can, to break it down into pieces. And I talk about every piece of the song. I talk about the beat. I talk about the rhythm and the feel of the song, the vibe of the song. I try as much as I can not to talk about the lyrics because most times these songs are party songs. Unless, again, it is a song where I need to talk about the lyrics, that I talk about the lyrics. So when I break down these things in all these aspects and I give a rating, most times it seems fair enough because I've literally taken my time to explain to you how I got to that rating. It's a different case when I say, oh, Ballon d'Or, Burna Boy and Wizkid is not a good song. The rating is going to be 2. And you'll be wondering, but the beat is good now. Why would you now call it 2? But this thing is good now. You understand? So when I begin to break it down, I tell you, oh, the beat is good. The production is superb. But, Wizkid, at the end, after a while, he faded out. And for that reason, I'll probably going to give the song, a 6/10. Then I also kind of predict, if the song is going to have good airplay or with a good video. There are some songs that when you hear it at first, you might not like it. But once it comes out with a video, the video amplifies the song. So I try to do all of that and give a rating. So at the end of the day, you might also listen to it and you say, I've had a lot of people say, yeah, what you said about that song, yes, it's true. I think if you do this, you do this. But me, I still like it, sha. And at the end of the day, I also put it there that, so if you are a fan of this particular genre of music or this particular kind of music, then you will like this song. But if that is not the kind of music that you are listening to, then it is better for you not to pay, attention to the song. But I've not really gotten that backlash where somebody will come and, start insulting me like I said, most times is all about, we agree to disagree most times. And most of the times they agree.
Now, let me put you on the spot. What's your best song this year?
Now, that's a big one. I'm not going to lie to you. I have a lot of songs that are, my best song this year. But let me just mention maybe top 3 that I've really, really enjoyed. So I'll say, what's the name of this song by Ira Star, Bloody Samaritan, Zinoliski, Kinofeshe. That was one of the best Amapiano songs I've heard so far. Then there is another song from, what's his name? Kiss Daniel. The song is titled Pour Me Water. A lot of songs that came out this year. Joe Boy, Alcohol, Baby Reading by Fave. So many songs. It's hard for me to pick what my best song has been.
Best music artist of all time for you?
House to Face Idibia. Easy. Anytime, any day.
Why would you pick Two-Face?
If I don't pick him, who else will I pick? I've been listening to him literally all my life. For him to be able to, survive all this decade and still make timeless music till date, it's just beyond exceptional. It's beyond exceptional.
Whiskey or Davido?
Oh boy, that's gonna be a tough one, man. If I'm to pick, I think I'll pick the both of them, I beg.
What do you think about these guys coming together, Peter and Paul?
Oh man, that has to be the biggest, if they're looking for the biggest music, should I say miracle of 2021, that has to be it. I won't lie to you, the fact that they were able to put aside their differences and come together, not just as P-Square, but as brothers, that meant a whole lot to me, and it gave me a whole lot of, I don't know, but I felt really, really good that finally, they were meant to be together. They were not meant to separate, even though if they decide to do separate music, do your separate music, come back together and give us good music. So I'm really, really glad, that they were able to work things out and they are back together. And I hope this time around, yes, they can decide to do their solo things and always come back to give us a P-Square album. I'm really, really looking forward to that.
What do you hope to achieve with your podcast? What would happen that you're now I'm fulfilled? This is what I set out to do in the first place.
When everybody in the world cannot stop talking about African music. That is the aim.
I remember a discussion I had with one of my friends who is PR and media. And he placed on his status sometimes this week saying that many artists, and I think you discussed this with Motolani, that many of the artists, or a good number of artists, or a few artists, Nigerian or African artists, are beginning to sell out big international
venues around the world.
Venues, exactly. But he was asking that, does this show that African music is beginning to have penetration to cultures that are not predominantly Africa, do not have any tie with Africa? Or is it just that it's the same Africans who are living in the diaspora that are coming to these events? Do we have the statistics? Can we say that African music or Afrobeat has gotten to a level where an American who is born American beginning to listen to it and is beginning to be infused into the culture of America, Asia, and other cultures that are not predominantly or do not have ties with Africa? What do you think about that before we wrap it up?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you and say from the onset, African music, quote and unquote right about now, or Nigerian music, quote and unquote right about now, has always cut across, the global stage. It's just of how big, did it get? In the 70s and the 80s, we had, a lot of foreign record label coming to Nigeria to sign the likes of Sonny Ade, Majek Fashek. These were Nigerian musicians that they were putting on foreign labels. So yeah, the growth of African music has always been. But, like you rightly said, are you going to say it is the Africans outside Africa that are listening to this music, or, the non-Africans are also connected to it? And the answer is going to be both. It takes one, to plug one person to the other. The fact that Justin Bieber, who is the king of pop, let me use that word, had a song by Wizkid, which is a Nigerian artist, and decided that he wants to be on the remix of that song, says a lot about how much our music has cut across, to the other side. But the truth is, you can't deny the fact that the Africans outside, Nigeria or outside Africa, they've done a whole lot to contribute to the African music, by listening to it. But no way you're not going to say that, because it is Africans that are listening to it, other Africans have also not tapped in. I mean, let's take, for example, Burna Boy's song went platinum or went gold in France. In as much as you want to say, there are Africans in France, but at the same time, there are also French people and white people in France that listen to those songs. And I don't think you will look at the whole population of France and you say, the Africans there are more than the French citizens, there. You understand what I'm saying? Same thing goes to, maybe goes to Canada. So the truth is, in as much as we don't have, a definite statistics that actually shows, these are the non-Africans that listen, to this, and these are the Africans that actually listen to this. But you cannot deny the fact that both Africans and non-Africans have started connecting, to Nigerian and African music. So I'm going to say it's a combination of both.
What's the best episode in terms of number this year?
I'm not going to lie to you. I can't remember what particular episode it is, but I know the episode has to be one I did with either the one I did with Dolakwa The Vibe, which is a Spotlight series, or the one I did with Martin Fuse, which is also a Spotlight series. But it is one of those series that I did with one of the fast rising artists that I used to do on the podcast. It's one of those two. But I can't really remember which of which at the moment.
It's been an opportunity to speak to you on your podcast. But before I let you go, I would want to give you an opportunity to speak to your audience, because I know as a podcaster that there is no podcast without people listening to us week after week, month after month. The floor is yours. What would you love to say to them?
Oh, okay. So let me say this the way I normally used to say it. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and members of the Cha-Cha Nation. Yes, it is me, Hafeestonova, aka your musical plug, creator of the Energy Force. And I just want to say thank you very much for being, the amazing fan any podcasters can ask of. I mean, this year has been a very, very tough year for me, but you guys has kept me going. I say thank you, nagode, eshe, obrigado, gracias, merci beaucoup, asante sana to every Cha-Cha gang across the globe. United States, UK, Germany, Canada, France, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia. I can mention almost all the countries that listen to my podcast. And for every single person out there that wakes up on a Saturday and say, yes, let me plug in the Cha-Cha Music Review Podcast, I say thank you very much, because without you, I'm not going to be here. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please continue, to listen to the Cha-Cha Music Review Podcast. Trust me, 2022 is going to be a much more bigger year. There is a lot of things that I have in stock for the podcast, but I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, because I like, just dropping those things as a surprise. I'm just going to keep it on the rails. But for everybody listening to me, I want to say thank you very much for the support. I really, really do appreciate. Without you guys, I won't be able to, to have achieved everything that has achieved this year. And trust me, we did achieve a lot. We had about 5 episodes that crossed 1,000 played. We got featured by an international podcaster. We got featured on an international platform to come and talk about the podcast. And none of this would have been possible without you guys. Oh, we even had our own theme song, Do you imagine that? So again, like I said, thank you guys very much. It's like come your way with a brand new season of the Cha-Cha Music Review Podcast. My name will always remain Hafeestonova, aka your musical plug, creator of the Energy Force. Peace out.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to host you on your own podcast. My name is Dayo Moyo.
Cha-cha time, two time for the cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang. Rocking with the best, cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang. Alayela with cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang. What's in my body, cha-cha gang. Give me the cha-cha gang, cha-cha gang.
What's in my body? Hafeestonova. Cha-cha gang, Cha-cha nation. Thank you. One love.